Afghanistan experience, and not just Afghanistan, but all around the world. These stories must be heard to inspire others to be a part of the solution.
Hi, I'm Lena Pilecki, and I completely agree with both of you. The people who stood up here and shared their stories, it was really brave and amazing. But I also think you guys being here and seeing the amount of people that were here, it's really amazing, and it's really comforting to know that we're not alone in this.
I was just saying thank you because it really touches my heart, but we're not quite there. We have to do our final thing. So this is going to give you four an opportunity before you come up. We're going to hear from Eli first, which is going to be wonderful. And then when we do the young adult panel, this is going to give you an opportunity to prepare your voices, but we're all going to help you. Because this song I've been singing since I was this high, it's like a theme song for all of us, and we all agreed that, this would be the song for all of us to sing. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. You can stand up if you want. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. One more time. Boom, boom, boom. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let's hear it for all of us. Lisa. And let's hear it for these three. How daring and brave and wonderful is that? So let's welcome Louisa again. She's going to make the introduction.
Hello everybody again. Good morning. Good morning. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. I think I shared with you yesterday that this was for me, the talk I gave on the history of the Smiley Family and Peace Conferences was a very collaborative process. And my first and foremost collaborator was Nell Boucher, our archivist, who's here today with her daughter. So I'm happy. I'd love to hear actually a round of applause for our archivist. About the history of Mohonk. So it's really been amazing to work with her. And when this whole process started for me, we were I think Mohonk Consultations was looking around for a student who might help to do some of the heavy lifting with the history research, because as I said before, I'm not a historian. And so Eli Bashavant, who's going to be our next speaker, is that student from Vassar. He's a senior at Vassar College. And he came up, and he and I and Nell would collaborate on discussing this material. He kind of went on his sort of more serious digging into the history. I did my kind of, well, explain that to a poet, Eli, come on, let's conceptualize about this. And Nell would fill in the blanks. And it was just a wonderful collaborative process. So looking forward to hearing Eli. Eli Bashavant.
Hooray for Vassar College.
All right, so let's try to figure out how to use this microphone. Hello, everybody. Thank you to Mohonk Consultations for inviting me here, to Brad. As Louisa said, I'm a senior at Vassar College. And this whole thing came kind of as a surprise to me. Last year, I think it was January, it began like a lot of things do when you're in college. You have like a full email inbox. And one of the things that I saw, I was going through delete. And then like I see the word Mohonk. What's that? Like, I never get so. Usually it's like join this club or something like that. But I saw the word Mohonk and I was like, wow, maybe I'll check it out. And it's like the opportunity to do like historical research on like the peace conferences at Mohonk, and I'd never heard that there were peace conferences. All I knew is that I'm on the cross country team, and in the fall a lot of times we'll come up and do like a long run up at the preserve. And so that was kind of my only taste of Mohonk at the time. I had ran up all the way up to the tower, panting most of the way. And when you're at the top of the tower, you're like, wow, this is beautiful. And then you turn around and you're just like, there's a hotel here? So I guess that's part of the reason. Then I saw like the opportunity to come up and look at the archives and be in the hotel. And I can go to the hotel. That's pretty cool. I don't stay the night. That's fantastic. So that was definitely the first thing that piqued my interest. But also just like, I talked to a couple of professors and they were saying like, wow, this is like a fantastic opportunity. Like, Mohonk's got an extensive archive. They've got over 100, well, I guess exactly, 150 years of history to offer, and their archive is like, it's huge and largely untapped. And then eventually after a series of emails, a lot of people helped me like throw this all together. My advisor, a bunch of people at Vassar, more than I can name right now. Eventually got me in contact with Louisa and Nell. And then after all that, eventually I come up here and we start doing the research process. And it turns out that Louisa was just looking for someone to just go through the conferences and read them over and try to kind of like summarize them and figure out like what happened there, why are they important. And so now I guess I'll talk a little bit about the history of the conferences and why I think they're still important that we talk about them today. So the Lake Mohonk conferences on international arbitration will be like the focus of the talk, I guess. They happened between 1895 and right as the U.S. was entering World War I. So yeah, moving on. So the story of the arbitration conferences begins with Albert Smiley coming to Mohonk in 1869 and deciding that he wanted to build a big resort hotel here. He was kind of a dreamer. As Noah and Louisa told me, this was a largely undeveloped piece of land. A lot of people thought it was useless, but he definitely had a dream. A dreamer, he saw that this land could be developed. And he built this magnificent hotel here. With the help of significant loans, he turned the dream into reality, but Smiley was not just a businessman. He wasn't looking to just make a buck off the beautiful land. He envisioned the Mohonk Mountain House as a means for bettering the world. To quote Smiley, it would be most deplorable if this house should ever acquire the accumulation of money without higher ulterior aims. And I think he really took that message, and a lot of people might just say that, but he really followed through with it. By the 1890s, Albert had hosted conferences on the affairs of Native Americans and African Americans, which at the time was truly revolutionary. You don't really see a lot of conferences on those marginalized peoples, especially at that period of time. So I think it really shows like the Quaker ideal of really trying to make sure like everybody has a place in society, everybody's voice is heard, and everybody is important in this society. But in 1895, I'd say that Smiley undertook his most ambitious undertaking with the peace conferences here, because they weren't just about like the affairs in the U.S. They were really a global process. The idea was to create an international arbitration body. I'm pretty sure most people would know what that is, but basically it's the idea of inserting like a third party to settle international disputes between countries, be it borders, maybe disputes between groups within countries. So it was to create like an arbitration court. And over time, the conferences would grow in size, hitting a maximum of about 300 people here. Albert invited a variety of different people. There were lawyers, legislators, judges, religious leaders, professors, lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, and notable attendees. There were several, but to name a few, there were a three-time Democratic presidential nominee. He lost all 3 times, but he was nominated 3 times. William Jennings Bryan. You got a Secretary of State, and Abdul Baha, the leader of the Baha'i faith. Following each conference, Smiley would telegraph the results to the White House, and on a few occasions there was a delegation actually sent to Washington to discuss with the leaders of the U.S. Just the results of the conference and suggestions to the people down in Washington. From the outset, Albert made it clear that the conferences would focus on efforts to promote arbitration rather than just discussing the horrors of war. He was very pragmatic about it. He was really trying to find like a direct solution. Like, yes, of course we can discuss like how bad war is. Like everybody knows that. But how are we going to fix the problem? Like what can we do to solve it? And the conferences did honor this request. Lasting for a few days, in June each year until 1917, the conference attendees discussed means for promoting arbitration worldwide. So they were really trying, at least in the first couple of years, to make a link between the U.S. And Britain, two most dominant powers in the world. If they could have these two countries sign an arbitration treaty, a lot of the people thought, especially at the conference, like maybe we can promote like a worldwide movement of international arbitration. Continuing on. This was kind of like a confluence of U.S. foreign policy at the time. So like around 1898, the U.S. had ended the Spanish-American War, and this was kind of like a big, exciting time for the Mohonk conferences. And that's because like they had just settled the war between the U.S. and Spain, but also because at the time the Hague conferences were happening, and this was happening over in Europe, and this ended up resulting in the establishment of the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague, and this was something that the people at Mohonk were super excited about. This court still exists to this day, and there certainly is, I'm sure as Louisa mentioned yesterday, a connection between the two conferences. As I said, the Permanent Court of Arbitration still exists today. It had 120 member states. It's home, the Peace Palace is also home to the International Court of Justice, the UN body, the UN judicial body, I should say. Unfortunately, despite the best efforts of the people at Mohonk, as well as the people at The Hague, World War I was on the way. As the conferences marched along, a major cause of the war was the increased militarization. Honestly, that too many syllables now. But yeah, increased militarization, and that was certainly on the minds of the Mohonkers at the time. And I think that draws out like a major theme of the Mohonk conferences. They were really concerned with like the militarization of the U.S. society and the world at large. To quote an attendee named Dr. W.A. Mowry, the science of warfare is so advanced that the modern implements of war are so destructive, so dangerous, that it is almost like suicide for any powerful nation to declare war against another. And if that's true then, 100 years ago, it's certainly true now. Nearly 38 years after the end of the Cold War, where we are today, we got like still have a huge proliferation of nuclear arms, and perhaps there's even more cause for concern. A lot of people kind of forget about this. They think of the Cold War as like a time of like relative peace, but with the alliances formed during the Cold War, both the Soviet alliances as well as the Western alliances, there was just like a huge proliferation and production of like small arms and guns to promote like to prop up like different people that might ally with you, and that just really caused like a huge problem with different militant groups like worldwide. So I think that's like a connection that you can make between the Mohonk conferences and today that we still do see like concerns about like increased militarization. Another lesson that I think the Mohonk conferences from 100 years ago can teach us is that it truly takes a village to build coalitions for peace. So Albert Smiley didn't just invite American statesmen to the conferences. He was careful to invite people of all professions, as each person can bring a different perspective on why peace and arbitration are so important and how they can be achieved. He would even invite like people who worked here at the Mountain House to come up, sit here up on the balconies to watch. So we really wanted to bring like a big tent of people into the conferences. People of different nations, people of different races, and different faiths were invited to the conferences. Because he realized that just one culture just pushing the ideas of arbitration is not a great way to create durable, sustainable peace. You need to bring everybody to the conferences. And while men did certainly predominate at the conferences, turn of the century, around 1900, there were a lot of women that participated in the conferences. They held different like, official titles too. There were secretaries of the conference that were women. And I think that's like a really strong Quaker ideal that the Smiley family brought in at the time. The Smileys recognized that to build peace, you couldn't just relegate like half the population, all the women, to the sidelines. You need to bring them in and have them speak, and they did, for sure. To tie it back to myself and my work, this semester I've taken a class on ending deadly conflict, and we've learned that in negotiating peace settlements, at least if you want them to be durable, you need to bring in like a broad coalition of people of different backgrounds, men and women. And another thing is that a lot of time when you see these modern photos of the results of like a peace conference, you often see a couple of gentlemen shaking each other's hand.